Welcome to Sortegories and Readsters session on heart words. We thought we would celebrate Valentine's Day talking about heart words with Michael Hunter and Linda Farrell from Readsters and Nancy and I from Sortegories. So we're excited to first get our words right. What's a high frequency word? What's a sight word? What's a heart word? And then what's a Zeno word? Like where did that list come from? I was reminded of the Zeno list when using FastBridge. If anyone uses FastBridge assessments, they use the Zeno list for their sight word progress monitoring. So Dolch and Fry are more common. Zeno might not be as common to some of us. But why are high frequency words important? How do we teach them? And then finally, how does Sortegories provide practice for these heart words? So Linda's going to get us started and help us get our words straight. So Linda, help us understand the difference between what these words mean.
I will do it. We're going to start with high frequency words. And the high frequency words are literally the words that are used the most frequently in texts. And people have studied these. Different people study them, different people use different materials, and that's why we have different high frequency word lists. But I'm going to show you that the first 25 to 50 words in the two most common high frequency word lists, which are the Dolch 220 and the Fry 300, plus the new one, Zeno, the 107 that people are looking at, are virtually the same. And so again, you guys, high frequency words, there isn't one list that's the best. They're all good because all these words are important. So they're the words that are used most often in text. And, of, to, they're generally our glue words, our function words, the beginning ones. So let's look at some high frequency words. I want to show you that this is the Dolch list. It's the first 10 high frequency words on the Dolch list. If we look at Fry, this is the first 10 words on the Fry list. We look at Zeno, this is the first 10 words in order on the Zeno list. Now let's compare them. If you look, you see we've sorted these by Dolch first because it's the most popular list. You see that the Dolch list has 10 words. Fry, if you want to get to those 10 words, it has 2 of the Dolch words are not on the Fry list. Can you see he is 11 on Fry and I is 20. So they're on the Fry list, but not in the top 10. So only 2 words differ. Now, if we come down and we look at we look at that, which is number 9, it's number 14 on the Dolch list. And if we will look at is, which is number 7 on the Fry list, it's 27 on the Dolch list. Now let's go to the Zeno list. If we compare the Zeno 107 word list to the Dolch list and the Fry list, we see that there are 3 words that are not on the Fry top 10 that we have to go to 13 for he, we have to go to 25 for I, and we have to go to 12 for you. I hope you're seeing that these are virtually the same. And you may wonder, why are they different? Well, they're different because of their sources. The Dolch word list is 220 words from the 1930s, and he went to lists of words that children had in their spoken language upon entering first grade, and then lists of words in books from pre-primer to grade 3. So you can see that Dolch was focusing on early reading. That's where he got his words from, early reading. Perhaps that's why U is 7 in Dolch and 12 in Zeno, because U is going to be used more in early readers than it is in the Fry or Zeno lists. Fry words, which came from 1950, are from lists of words in texts and other materials used in grades 3 to 9. So we would expect to have more colors in the more frequently used word lists in Dolch than we would in Fry because of where they chose the words. Now, Zeno has 107 words, which is kind of a weird number, but there's this huge book called the Word Frequency Guide. It's 1,500 pages or so. It's well over 1,000. It was put together in 1995, and it used about 6,000 texts. It put samples from a little over 6,000 texts and counted the words in those. So it's going to be more like the Fry than it is like the Dolch, just by the nature of the text that it chose. And that list is what Zeno's analysis, Susan Zeno, showed up. Her 107 words in their analysis make up 50% of all text. So that's how they settled on 150 words. I'd like to look at a few other words and compare them, just because I just want to show you that other words compare. We have. It's 34 on the Dolch list, 24 on Fry, 27. Little, huge word for us when we teach kindergarten through second grade, and it's 39 on the Dolch list because you see little in many texts in pre-primer text, in primer to grade 3 texts, but it's 106 and 102 on the Zeno list because that word doesn't occur nearly so often in the higher, in the more upper grade texts. So we have down, which is 40 in Dolch, 93. You can see that most of these words are here. I was surprised. Come is number 64 on Dolch and number 97 on Fry, but it didn't make the Zeno list. Good is 82 and 122, but it didn't make the Zeno list again. Now, it made the huge word frequency, but it didn't make that 107 list. Whoops. 2 also didn't make the Zeno list. Water, on the other hand, is not on the Dolch list, but it is on Fry and Zeno. And the same with time is not on the Dolch list, but it is on Fry and Zeno. And let me tell you why it's not on the Dolch 220 list. Dolch did not use nouns on his list. So he has a separate list that most people don't know about of the 95 most frequent nouns. And these words water and time are on that list. So Michael, take it away.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go. Okay. So we're going to continue talking about the terms and defining our terms. So Linda just talked about the big term for the night, the heart words.
High frequency words, Michael.
High frequency words, excuse me. We
That's
haven't
okay.
talked about heart words yet. Linda and I correct each other's words when they don't come out right. And mine didn't come out right. Sight words. So we want you guys, one of the things that we really want everybody to carry away from tonight is that the term sight words has a new meaning. We want you to have a new meaning for that term sight words. And this is based on what we've learned from the researchers in the field that we call the science of reading. And a sight word is now, for researchers and most people now in the science of reading, when we think about a sight word, it is a word that you own. It's as a good reader. As a reader, when you see the word in print, it just pops into your brain. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to decode it. It's almost like it's the magic of reading, that when you just see that word in print, it's right there available for you. The pronunciation is there. It matches right to the print for you easily. You don't think about it. And you most likely have a meaning for that word that's also instantly available to you. So that's the sight word. Any good reader is going to have tens of thousands, 100,000. I don't know how many. It depends on how voraciously you read and how broadly you read. But we all have a ton of what we want to now think of as sight words. So the old and outdated definition that we're trying to replace is either all the high frequency words and we just call those sight words, or high frequency words that are irregularly spelled and can't be easily decoded. So that's, people confuse high frequency word, heart word, and sight word. And we were trying to clarify some definitions here. So we now want to think about the science of reading sight word. So beginning readers, they're not going to have a lot of sight words because they're just learning to read. They've not had time to be exposed to a lot of words and to own those words yet. And that's the process of learning to read, is where they're going to start building this huge, ultimately, sight word bank that the mature or proficient, experienced readers have. How do we acquire those sight words? We see them in print. If we are automatic with our decoding, we instantly figure out what the pronunciation for the spelling pattern that we're reading is, and 2 or 3 exposures, and we own that word. You no longer have to sound it out. Now, heart words. This is what we're here to talk about tonight. And the heart words are going to be, first of all, words that have irregular spelling. They will be high frequency words that have irregular spelling, or they may be academic words that have irregular spellings or unusual spellings that we need to own by some.
You're on mute.
I hit something.
Oh, okay. I got it. I'm on.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know where I got muted though. Okay. Heart words with regular spellings that a student hasn't learned yet. So this is one of the big things that those of you that know what we do with heart words is that a lot of the high frequency words are actually decodable. And we don't need to teach those as heart words unless a student needs that word before they learn how to decode that word, before they learn the spelling pattern that's in that word, it's decodable, but they might not have learned it yet. And our favorite is everybody in kindergarten wants their kids to be able to read the word like, because it's a word that kindergartners relate to probably more than almost as highly as they do I. They need to be able to read I like because all their sentences start with that. So we want them to be able to read like. So that for a kindergartner would be, they haven't learned the silent E or vowel consonant E pattern yet. They won't learn that till first grade, most likely. So if we want them to have like in there to be able to read it, we're going to call that a heart word, and they'll learn it in using the heart word steps. For beginning readers, most heart words are going to be the high frequency words because they'll be either irregularly spelled or they'll be ones they haven't learned the spelling pattern for yet, but they need them because they're high frequency. And then finally, as I said, we could also have heart words that are those words that are tricky to spell or tricky to remember the spelling of, and that we need for students to own as sight words. And we're going to teach those like heart words. Oops, and now because that's done that. Okay. So here's another way to look at what we were just talking about, thinking about heart words as high frequency words transitioning possibly. So we're going to have some heart words that will be decodable from the very beginning of phonics. So they're always decodable and they don't need to be heart words. So these are high frequency words that are decodable. The first list would be decodable in kinder. If we add digraphs and blends in first grade, they're going to be decodable in first grade. The middle list are heart words now, if we're in the CVC, thinking first grade and kinder. These would be heart heart words because they're high frequency words that are decodable later, but we might need you to know them now. So we would teach them as heart words. And then finally, there are those irregularly spelled ones that don't fit the most common spelling patterns, and they are considered irregular. Therefore, they will always be heart words. And Linda, do you want to add anything to that? Because you are the one that put these lovely lists together.
No, I
Nope.
think that was
Okay.
perfect, Michael.
All right. Well, good for me. So I'm going to stop sharing so Nancy can take over.
Well, and what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to make Sheryl host because we have people still coming in and I can't do that
Oh, okay.
and run my screen at the same time.
Well, Nancy,
No,
come
maybe
on
Sheryl
now.
can ask a question and you guys can chat amongst yourselves for a moment.
Yeah, so one of the questions is this new? Is this teaching heart words a new thing? And what is the history of teaching heart words?
Would you like me to take that, Sheryl?
Yep.
I would love
Go
that.
for it, Linda.
Well, okay. In about 1999, I left investment banking and started working with a woman named Mary Ellen Cummings. And we did a lot of workshops together and we talked about reading as reading people do. And we were working in a school and we saw the teacher having the kindergarten kids just memorize all the words, whether they were decodable or not. And either Mary Ellen or I can't remember who, said, why don't we come up with a way to teach these based on phonics? So how can we do that? Well, in almost all these words, some of the letters are related to their sounds. So why don't we call the words that aren't heart words, because they
The letters that aren't.
the letters that aren't heart letters, because they have to learn them by heart. So heart words have heart letters. Now, how things go is Mary Ellen and I may have heard of heart words from someplace else, but we didn't remember it. We'd never seen it used. So we used it, and then I became a letters trainer. And I was one of the original letters trainers, and I told all the letters trainers about it. And Louisa and Mary Ellen had done a video teaching with heart words, and it never really became huge, but
No, but it was really cute because she had a heart that she wore when she did it.
Yeah,
I'm just
always when she
remembering
did
that
it.
video now.
Yeah. And so I think that it became popular because letters picked it up. And so people heard about it from letters. And I don't think Mary Ellen and I probably invented it. We probably had heard of it someplace else. But I can guarantee you, I never met anyone else who used it until Michael and I used it, and Mary Ellen, and then letters people started using it. And I think that's how it became popular.
That's great history. We're going to talk about how to teach these words in a bit, but I wonder if I can sneak in one question in the chat because I'm afraid I'm going to lose it.
Sure.
And that is, should we start teaching high frequency words while teaching sounds and letters, or wait until all the sounds and letter names have been taught before introducing irregular words beyond the CVC words?
Well, Linda, do you want me to take that? Or do
You go
want to
ahead
take
and
it?
I'll add if I want to.
Okay. So the answer is, at Readsters, what we recommend is that while students are learning their letter names, we will not teach any high frequency or heart words because they're just learning the letter names, and it's too much to try to ask them to remember a string of letters that they don't even know the names of as a word, a whole word. Once a student has learned and at Readsters, we like to do letter names before letter sounds, and that's a whole nother discussion. But as they're learning letter sounds, we then would introduce a basic 10 high frequency words taken from the very front end of both the Fry and the Dolch list that are the most common and the most functional for writing easy, simple sentences.
And
But
not
none
decodable.
of them decodable. Exactly. none of them decodable. So we drop in at, because those will be decodable as soon as we start phonics, but we need the, and, of, to, was, I can't quite remember the rest of them,
Were.
but that's, I, were. So 10 basic ones like that. And those, we just teach one at a time while they're continuing to learn their letter names. Now, if we wait to teach, say, was, until a student knows the letter sound for the letter W and they can hear the first sounds in words, then when we teach was, they don't have to memorize the whole word, because we can say, the word is was. What's the first sound you hear? Ooh. How do we spell ooh? Oh, W. So now that word was has one part of it that they already can read and spell, the first sound, the first letter. And that makes that word unique from the other 10. And they have an anchor for that word.
May I add one other thing, Michael?
Please.
And that is, if a student is looking at 2 and reads 4, or is looking at 4 and reads 2, which I'm sure you guys have seen, we don't say, oh no, that's 4. What we say, if the word is 2 and they read 4, we say, what's the first sound in that word? And inevitably the student will say, t. Oh, it's 2, because now we're giving him a phonics anchor, which is what Mary Ellen and I were trying to do with high frequency words back in 1999, is make them a part of the phonics program, not just these 220 words that are out there that you just have to memorize.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Back to Nancy, talking more about the importance of high frequency words.
Right. I hope that you can hear me, because I've lost all pictures other than my screen. But to pick up on what Michael and Linda have already said, we've established that there is this list between 25 or 300, depending on which ones, that make up a high percentage of the words in reading material. But the other point that we want to make is, why is it so important to teach these? And one of the reasons is that many of these high frequency words are cohesive ties or links, which by virtue of being those, gives them an outsized impact on building meaning. So what does all that mean? Let me click again. Nancy Hennessy, who has taught us a lot about reading comprehension and as a subset of that, syntax, points out that cohesive devices, those syntactic and semantic elements, think words here, help bridge between meanings within and across sentences. So as it turns out, a lot of these little high frequency words that we use a lot are either cohesive ties or they are connective. So let me go to the next slide and break that down a little more as it relates to what we're talking about tonight. And that is, cohesive ties turn out to be those words that link and relate back to another word, like a pronoun refers back to a previous noun, or a synonym relates back to the word and just using another word, or you repeat the word. That's what we mean by cohesive ties. Then there are the connectives, and these are hugely important. And those are the conjunctions, the ands, ors, buts, the little preposition words, and the adverbs. And what happens if we sort out yet another way the first 100 words? What we see is, and there I counted these, 63 of the 100 words, this first 100 words are these connecting kinds of words. And this has an implication that it's very important. And then to pick up on what Michael and Linda were just saying, of those, the ones in red are the ones that are permanently not decodable. That means they're permanently irregular. Students will not learn in a normal or a scope and sequence of phonics. They're not going to learn how to do the sound, the and what. It just doesn't exist. So it's very important to consider how important these words are. And add to that something that Katie Pace Miles and Linnea Airy have been working on to help us understand, and that is when we learn words, we try to hook up three things: the sound, the letter form, and its meaning. But in fact, these little words don't mean anything without a context. So let's take a look at what that means. And that is, what difference does one little word make? Well, it means the difference between being on something or in something. And that is why we have to be sure that we are paying attention, first of all, and teaching these little words. And we will go back to how we do that in a few minutes. But I wanted to share this because I think this is really important, that if we take a look, the passage on the left is a decodable passage from Flyleaf. The one on the right is an authentic passage from ReadWorks, just so we're not playing favorites for a type of text here. And the next slide shows, what if I highlight, which I did here, all of those high frequency words that we were just looking at. And then you can see that is on the right, it's 47%, and on the left, that's 54% of the words in that text. And then if we look at the text without those connecting words, it doesn't make much sense. That is how important, number one, those words are, and more importantly, why it's so important for them to be read accurately. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and we'll do another question perhaps and transition.
And Linda, I'll go ahead and share, and you can talk about the first slide from my.
Okay, I have to get.
I know, I'm going to take us there, right?
Okay.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. There we go. Okay.
So when Mary Ellen and I were thinking about this, and it's what I think most people do, is we focus on the difficult spelling in the word. And we can only do that if the children understand phonemic awareness, and they can, because they have to be able to identify the first, the last, or the middle sound. And they have to understand that letters have a sound that they spell. So if children don't have phonemic awareness, and if children don't know at least, like in two, at least the letter sound T, it's not going to work, because O is the heart word, because it isn't spelled like we expect it. And what's so good about heart words is that children don't have to memorize these. If we used heart word teaching, kids would never get was and saw mixed up, ever, because they would look at was and they would know that first letter is W, and it has to be was, it can't be saw, and vice versa with saw. But the traditional teaching was, let's just memorize was and saw, and then the kids can't remember, well, what order is it in for was? What order are they in for saw? And that's it, Michael.
Okay. So here's how we introduce a heart word. Teacher puts the word on the board and reads it. So this word is said. Everyone read the word. Said. Okay. Now, we use our fingers when we think about segmenting the sounds in a word. So we call it stretching, and we start with our thumb, and we will all stretch the sounds we hear in said. D. Said. How many sounds did we hear in the word said? And you can show me with your fingers. 3. So now I am going to draw a line on the board for each sound that we heard in said. D, said. And going to point to the first line and ask someone to tell me what the first sound in said was, and how do we spell, and then I'll write S up. I'll go to the last letter and ask someone else, what's the last sound in said? How do we spell D? and we put the D up there. And then I'm going to write the AI in the middle, put a heart over it, and say that, and actually I would put 2 hearts over it, so that, because they're 2 heart letters, and we want you to remember that they're 2 heart letters in said, they're right next to each other. And we're not going to dwell on the sound, but we're going to talk about the letters. The heart letters in said are AI. Everybody, what are the heart letters in said? AI. Okay. And we do that chorally.
Michael, may I say something?
Yes.
It's really important that you keep the word up there so they see it.
Yes.
You don't hide it, because what you want them to do is be looking at that word and getting a visual image of that whole word while you're breaking it up into sound, so that when someone says D, well, what letter spells D? They say D, and then they see that that D is at the end of the word.
Right. And even if they weren't sure, it's there. They can see, oh, it's a D. Right. Okay. So now we're all going to spell and read the word aloud. So we all say S-A-I-D, said. And I actually like to do that 3 times, because this is the first time they're spelling the word. So we would do it 3 times. And then we erase. And these are continuing steps to continue to reinforce it. You might not have to do this with all of the words. We'll talk about that in a second. But the next thing would be, from memory, the students take their finger and they look at their finger as they invisibly write the word said on the desk, saying S-A-I-D, said. And then this is fun, but we can ask questions about that word said to get them to hold a mental picture of it in their brain. And so we can ask, what was the last letter in said? What was the first letter in said? What came before the D? What came after the S? What are the heart letters? And if you do enough of that questioning, then we could ask them to spell the word backwards. Everybody try that
First, they
right
spell
now.
it frontwards, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to make sure that they spell it forward at the end of asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you've spelled it forward. Now we can spell it backward. D-I-A-S. And what that does is, of course, then we immediately have to spell it forward, because we don't want to get it in their brains backwards. But the backward spelling, in order to be able to do that, you have to hold that mental image of the print in your brain long enough to go, oh, you have to see it. You can't think it
And you
without looking for it.
never write it backwards.
Never.
Only spell it aloud.
And you only do that one time with the backward spelling. But it does sort of have a magic little, and the kids like it, so it's a good way to hold it there. And then we could go on and have you write said on a whiteboard, underline the heart letters, put hearts over the heart letters, because those are the ones that we want you to remember. The S and the D take care of themselves, but in said, the AI, in that order, have to be remembered. And then if you've done that correctly on your erasable surface, you could write it on an index card to create your own flashcard for your studying. We're going to share the steps that we just went through in a handout with the recording. So there are 9 steps, and that's what we just went through. So I'm going to unshare now and let you guys, Sortegories, take back over. I'm not sure who's doing it.
I am.
That would be Nancy, but I'm going to sneak in a question here. What evidence do we have that the newer high frequency word methods, but now we know it's not new because Linda rocked it out years ago, but we'll just call it this heart word method, are any better than read, spell, read methods that a particular intervention uses? I won't name it, but how would you compare what Michael just demonstrated with the read, spell, read method?
Sheryl, I don't know the read spell method. Read spell method. I don't know of anybody who's done research on this way of teaching heart words. But what I will say is because it's phonics based, it fits closer to the research than anything that is totally relying on memorization.
Mhm.
And I don't think that can be in dispute. We also have had a number of Title I teachers and teachers of lower students who've come to us and said, thank you for heart words. I've stopped beating my head against the wall. My kids can understand the heart words. And also when we consult, we just say, stop giving your kids heart words before they know the alphabet. I mean, that hasn't been divorced. I mean, they start teaching the alphabet in kindergarten many times the first day, and then they also start teaching high frequency words, which makes no sense.
Yeah, talk about cognitive overload.
Right.
But I would say, Linda, I think we can reasonably interpret from what we do know about the research that in the way that all sight words are created, that if we bring in the phonics, the sound relation to the spelling, we are building the orthographic mental images. We're doing the sight word that we would do with regularly decodable words. And so it, as you said, it aligns well with what we know from the science, even if it hasn't been researched by the science yet.
Right. Thank you for that. And one more question kind of along the same lines is, should these high frequency words, including sight words, be posted on word walls to help kids remember them?
Well, I'm not an expert in word walls. If I were going to post these, I probably would post I don't know, I'm not an expert in word walls, but I certainly know that I would post them by first sound. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it seems reasonable to me that for a little while, it would be good for the children to have that scaffold, but not for too long, because we really do want them to get it to be a word that they own in reading.
So word walls for the most part are posted by first letter. So you could have should and so on the same
first letter. No, first sound.
I know, but this is where I'm saying, like,
Yeah, that's a downfall.
If I said first letter, I meant first sound.
You didn't. I was just clarifying how teachers would do that on a word wall, which could be really confusing for new learners.
Yeah. Sheryl, can I real quickly address something that somebody just put in the chat that I think bears clarifying? Someone talked about having the students, when they are rehearsing the spelling of said, instead of saying the letter names, they say the letter sounds. And we don't do that on purpose, because when we're thinking about the heart words, we are not thinking about the sounds other than to where they already know how to spell them. We don't want to, and the reason we would not go and then write AI when we're saying is AI is not the spelling of It's not a common spelling, it's an irregular spelling. And so we don't want to tie the AI to the and risk that becoming a way of spelling The high frequency words, because of the irregular spelling, is more about, we start with the sound and we use the sound where we can to relate to the spelling, but we don't want to reinforce the irregular part of the spelling as a spelling for a sound. It becomes the heart letters. And so the focus is on that they are heart and not the focus on the sound that they are spelling.
Right. Thank you for that. And many people are posting in the chat box, no, put them on a sound wall, not on a word wall, no need for word walls. So that question definitely has lit up the chat, which I really appreciate. Okay, Nancy, how does Sortegories practice these heart words? This is something new that we added to 3rd edition that we're pretty excited about.
I thought you'd never ask.
Sorry, we got off on our
I'm
questions.
joking. No, I'm teasing. No, I love the questions, and more importantly, I love the answers. Well, as Sheryl just said, when we worked on, started working on Sortegories 3.0, we wanted to bring it up to date with some of the newer ways of talking about old things. And so for that, we did, in Sortegories, we have 3 rows of activities. Whoa, that was wrong. Back to here, I hit the wrong.
Hold on.
Wait, why isn't it not?
I can't see you. Where'd you go?
We need everyone to mute, please. Picking up. I'm having trouble. And in Sortegories, in the 3 different rows of activities, we work on practice heart words in row 1 through the activity Map It. And again, we practice in row 3 with phrase building. And let's take a look at how that goes. First of all, we have a limited number of heart words that we work on in level A of Sortegories. And let's take a look at that. And here we go.
Hearts let you know which part of the word is tricky. The heart part needs to be memorized. The rest of the word can be decoded using your
Nancy, we don't
knowledge of
see the
letters
video, we
that
just see the
represent
slide.
sounds. A yellow heart means you'll learn the
You're
way
not
the
seeing
sound
the
is spelled later. A red heart means you'll need to memorize the sound's spelling by heart. Click Next.
You're not seeing any movement?
We hear it, but we only see your slide.
Yeah.
That's strange. I don't know what is wrong. I can go out of sharing and try sharing again.
Look and make sure you've checked the video.
I did. I have optimized video and sound. And yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, everyone.
We can hear it,
No, I'm
we just
having,
couldn't see it.
yeah, I'm not sure why
Oh,
that's happening.
Now you're good.
Okay. So shall I go back?
I think you can just keep going.
All righty, good. So when we get into the heart word dictionary, it's possible to click on a word.
The letters IR spell in first.
And what we focus on here is what Michael and Linda were talking about, which is the part that in some way, either temporarily, which is what the yellow hearts are about, or with a red, they'll be permanently irregular according to the sound to spelling correspondences. We mark those with this coding schema of the heart. So, and we have all of the words in the dictionary that fit into level A, or we cover in level A. Oh my goodness, what did I do? Okay. Then let's listen to the activity Map It, where we will see how we work on listening to the sounds within a heart word.
Sortegories.
Level A. Map it. First, an important question. Dogs or cats?
We just put that in because we needed to see the dog and the cat.
The word is back.
So in Map It, in segmentation, we are having the students do what Michael was showing by drawing the lines, which is listening for the sound, the number of sounds in the word. So the word is the word.
The word is
back. And we're going to click the number of sounds in back, back, and then we submit it. This is not a hard word.
back. 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 The word is from.
Now, in this case, it's going to be
From. And
And what we're showing
From.
where the sound is different than
The word is swift.
sound to spelling that students may know. The next word was swift.
Swift. Swift.
Before I show you the
The
next,
word is they.
I want to show you that we have that same heart word dictionary available within the activity. So we can either pre-teach or have students go to the heart word dictionary to look up a word again that they may have seen. Like if I wanted to review or repeat, what was that I was supposed to understand about the word from? And then this last word is?
The word is they.
And it's they, so it's t. And then
They. They.
So in row 1, we practice hearing segmenting these words, whether they're regular or heart words or have a heart part. And then those words are used in the 3rd row when we do phrase building, where we have learned and worked with those words and can now use them to build phrases. Because going back to that important piece about how many of these high frequency words need to be in a context for us to use them accurately, and also to be able to understand the meaning of words when they're put together, we have an activity where we first build a phrase.
The fat cat.
And in that first part of the activity, the hearts are present. In part 2 of phrase building, we have the students work with that phrase, as we'll see here.
What question does this phrase answer in the following sentence? The fat cat climbed slowly up the tree.
And in that situation, we have faded the use of the heart so that they're focusing on reading the word without that scaffold. And then as we move to level B of Sortegories and continue on with phrasing, you'll see that we have some of the same words we just saw in level A, they, from, the, but we are fading the use of the hearts. And in fact, students will see those high frequency words. Some of them are heart words, but without the scaffolding of the hearts. And I think we are to the point where we can do some more questions, Sheryl.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Oh, no, I'm not muted. There's a couple of questions in the chat box. I'm going to hit my list of for questions that were on social media.
Sheryl, I think Linda.
Yeah, can I answer? Somebody asked me what's a jingle.
Well, I
usually use the word ditty, but nobody knows what that word means either. So we teach high frequency words that don't have any letter sound correspondence at the time the children are learning them with a little song. The word THE doesn't have anything that children can relate to. So we say, I can say the, or I can say the, but I always spell it THEB. And they point, I always spell it THE, and then they point to the letters as they're saying it. So they're looking at the word as they say it. For the word of, I always say this differently. You guys, I was a junior high teacher because I can't sing, I can't make up cute ditties. But this one is of. Of is hard to spell, but not for me. O-F of. O-F of, and of course they're pointing. O-F of, I love of. So those are the ways to get children to remember things that you don't have any sound spelling correspondence to hang on to.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And someone just wrote in the chat, I know what a ditty means. So some people do know what they mean.
Oh, I'm so glad.
If we use it enough, it will come back, Linda. So we're just
Okay,
gonna
well,
bring-
I'm gonna keep using it then.
we're
I'm
gonna bring
stop
we're gonna
using
bring that
jingle.
word. We're gonna bring that word back.
All right.
Let's
Let's
see.
out and Diddy is in.
So there's a question here that can sometimes turn conversation sideways, but what about sight words being listed separately on report cards?
Hmm.
Report cards is always an interesting topic to bring up.
I think that's a bigger question than what about sight words being listed on
Word
or high
walls.
frequency words on report cards. Someone who is separating, a school district that's separating out high frequency words, I can almost guarantee you, if they aren't now, they very recently have been one that believes that children have to memorize those
Yes.
high frequency words. And that's just that we shouldn't have them memorizing them. And I think the whole thing of report cards needs to be revisited.
Yeah, it seems to me like it would put undue and overemphasis on
Mhm.
the high frequency words versus where are you in your reading skills.
Yes, I agree. When you see sight words used in that manner, they're not using the word in the way that Linda defined sight words in the beginning of the presentation as well. So we really have to ask ourselves what we're talking about when we say sight words on a report card. That does beg the question, is that really what we want on there? So thanks for that. I think as we learn more about the science of reading, I think we have to be smarter than our report cards and maybe change our report cards, right? So it's a hard political structure to change, but something that needs to happen. Another one is, what is the best way to share this information and methods with parents, this heart word method, since it is new to a lot of parents? So we know it's not new to education. Linda had shared the history with us, but it is new to a lot of parents. And how might we share this information with parents? Any good ideas there?
Michael, you were telling me some good ones before we started.
I was, and I've already forgotten.
Oh,
Well, I think, if how do you share other things with parents? I mean, this is not something we do because we're not in the schools regularly, but I think, if you did a mini PLC for the parents, send the steps with a letter, an explanation home to the parents. I think the idea that at least letting parents know that this is how we're doing something different with heart words. We're only focusing on the heart letters for the pure memorization, and the students should be able to read the other letters could be helpful for sure. And how you get the parents involved, everybody has their own method, whether it's bring them in for pizza and give a seminar or whatever.
Right.
I've seen lots of things, but it's not my bailiwick.
And maybe even sending home the handout that we will share with you from the Readsters that Linda and Michael have created, or modify it to make it your own handout. Like, what are your steps in teaching them in the classroom or practicing them with Sortegories? So I think that would be.
Sheryl, one thing I would say is I would focus on the practice rather than the teaching. I think the teaching needs to happen in the classroom.
Good
What we're
point.
looking for from parents, I hope, is not that they're teaching, but that they are helping with practice if they can.
Yeah,
We
that's
should never send anything home that the students haven't been taught before, in my view.
Right. And I wanted to jump in and just say, Sortegories is designed for practice. We are really expecting that teachers will have explained this process and that Sortegories is reinforcing. So we don't want to confuse Sortegories as a first step of teaching this to our students.
I want to say something. I was looking at the Sortegories website the other day. There are two of the cutest videos on this website. You have to go watch them. If you're in a bad mood, you cannot stay in a bad mood watching these two videos. These little boys are so cute.
So they're, Linda, they're on our Facebook user group page.
Oh, I'm
Sortegories
sorry.
User book, but they're also on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So they're on both of those. And now that you've mentioned it, maybe I'll send the boys in the recording because they are pretty cute. We have permission to share them, but they're really cute. Let's see. I have one more question on the list. This is again from social media. When comparing similar heart words, you group unusual spelling patterns like these and those. What are your thoughts about grouping by sound like one, W-O-N, and one, O-N-E?
Michael?
We have someone that needs to mute if they could, please. Thank you. Okay. Yes. That was an interesting question. And I when I first read it, I was a little confused by it, but I think I figured it out. I think what the question, what confused me was the words one and one are sound exactly the same, and that they would be easily confused. So of course we would not want to try to teach those together. But I think the question is really getting at that when we think about grouping, it's by spelling pattern, which is a visual pattern. And that's what we want to, for the heart words, we want to organize around the spelling pattern, because that's what's going to be the heart letters if it's an unfamiliar or irregular one, and not on the sounds. So I think what the question was could we, would you put one and one together? I don't think that's a good example. But yes, we would organize, but not around the sounds, organize around the spelling pattern, which of course, if it's the spelling the same sound, like he, be, she, me, and the long E, that's going to be what we're organizing around. But the problem with the words one and one is that the spelling is disparate, but the sounds are the same, and that's very confusing.
I was in a classroom one time and the teacher was teaching once and the kids couldn't get it. And so of course she said, Linda, can you get up and teach it? And of course I'd never taught it once before, but I showed them one and said, because they had talked about the meaning for once. So you do it one time, once. So it's going to be spelled just like one, except it has a C before the E. And that worked really well. And she told me they remembered it. I mean, of course, we practiced it. We spelled it backwards, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a better grouping because the letters are the same, as well as the sounds. And the other thing is, I would not teach one W-O-N with O-N-E, because one is the first and last sound are perfect. It's just the middle sound. And that
W-O-N-E one.
Yeah, one. And that's the same, you know, you could maybe, I'm trying to think of other words that have an
Well, you
O.
could group one
from.
with something like from and come,
Yeah.
and you know, where you've got the O spelling the short U. That's where it belongs, the W-O-N-E one.
Not an E.
O-N. not the E.
W-O-N.
I don't know where the E came from. That's silent E. He just gets in everywhere.
Well, thank you very much. We are coming to a close. We're trying to stay within our 8 o'clock time. We've hit a lot of questions in the mic, but in the chat, but if there's anything that we've missed, it's a burning question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, look at us. We answered all the questions.
I know.
How did we do that?
Sometimes it takes a minute, but
I know.
well, thank you, everyone. We will send, there's more messages coming in. We will send the recording. We will send some handouts. I'll look up the twins and send those boys recordings, since Linda's their biggest cheerleader. They are super cute.
Oh,
And if I will say, if people do come up with questions down the road, feel free to email me, Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L at Readsters, READSTERS.com. And if you have questions about Sortegories, Sheryl and Nancy, I don't know who's the one to go to there, but.
You can go to either one of us.
All right.
We are Sheryl at Sortegories or Nancy at Sortegories.
Okay.
thank
Well,
everyone.
Thank you,
so
everyone,
much,
for
everyone.
tuning
And
in on
thank
a
you,
Monday
Linda.
night.
Thank you, Linda and Michael, for joining us, and
And
happy
happy
Valentine's Day to you
Valentine's Day.
all.
That's
Everybody,
right.
happy
Happy
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Heart,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Do you want to stop the recording, Nance?
I do.